Hey PBO people, this is Ben, aka the Alabama Alakazams, back with a kind of interesting video. Uh, Something that I kind of just on a whim decided that I wanted to do. So, about a week and a half ago now, I dropped the PBO for the season. I've just kind of wanted to take a break from Pokemon for a bit. I've been doing a bunch of different leagues for a long time, but I decided I still wanted to, be up with the PBO, be doing something in the PBO because I don't want to be disconnected completely, right? So what can I do? And I thought a kind of cool something that I could do would be these game reviews where I look over the games and of like one division probably per video. I don't know how often I'll do these videos and kind of go through them, and more so than just react to the game, I'll also kind of give my insights into like what I think's going on in the games, maybe a little bit more in depth. I think I just thought it'd be a fun thing to do. I'm gonna, yeah, because it wasn't showing on everything. So I'm gonna go over Neon Division games for week 3 first. There's 6 games because one of the games hasn't been played yet. And I'm going to go over these 6 games because I think it could be a fun thing to do. I might do these videos more often. I don't know if people like them. I think it could be fun. But this first game is Jasper versus Superboy Rex. I believe this is Rex. I think he's the Uncertain Unknowns. I believe this is Cass. So I'm more so going to focus on like looking at the teams straight up. So the Terras are, it appears to be Heatran and Armarouge and Goodra. So Heatran for the Superboy Rex here, Terra Fairy, and on the Cass's side we have Goodra and Armarouge. The Ogerpon is also probably Terra, if I had to guess. Usually Ogerpon basis Terra, and we don't allow Wellspring Terra in the PBO, so that also is likely not a Terra captain. So off rip, the things that I notice are Wellspring has a pretty good matchup here, other than the fact that if this Ogerpon Terras it, outspeeds it. But if pre-Terra, nothing really wants to switch into Ivy Cudgel. Ogerpon doesn't really love it. It could be a defensive Rocky Helmet, Spiky Shields kind of thing going on. But I imagine this Ogerpon could also be like a U-turn or something to get out on Ogerpon, or even just a neutral move, because if it gets the +2, Ogerpon isn't going to like it at all. If this thing can get the +2 and a Trailblaze, I really don't like the odds of Super Rex being able to take the attacks. This Goodra could also be Sap Sipper for the Ogerpon, so that could be highly problematic. I will say on Superboy Rex team, until this Goodra Terras, Conkeldurr is very, very threatening for Cass. There's really not a good switch in to the fighting coverage because you really don't want Armarouge switching in, and Armarouge also threatens to take a knock every time it comes in. It's kind of why Psychic's a pretty bad defensive type. Everything that can get knocked usually has the option of running it. Like, it's not a bad move to have ever, and it's really spammable into pretty much every team because getting rid of items is instant value without having to predict it all. Bundle is pretty good here as well, obviously, especially at first glance. Water hits everything except for Wellspring and Goodra, and they can get hit by ice moves. But, you can't spam water because of the water absorb from Wellspring, and you can't really spam I guess you can spam ice. Ice is actually pretty free into this team again, Armarouge being the brunt to take it, so that's probably what Rex is going to do, is spam Ice Beam. There's no reason to freeze dry. It doesn't really do anything for him here. Heatran, Magma Storms are also, I mean, this could be a Flash Fire Armarouge. That's 100% a possibility, but it's very likely weak armor. So Magma Storms are decently free. If you Terra Fairy, you probably beat Ting-Lu 1v1, and that's probably the thing that would want to come in to take a Magma Storm. A Goodra, again, could do it. But that would be a bit overwhelming, in my opinion. Low kicks is okay here. The stabs are obviously always going to be very strong. But I will say both sides have some overwhelming offensive options. I do think, like, so if this is an AV comp, for example, that's a decent check to Blood Moon, especially if you EV it to outspeed their Blood Moon. It really depends on how the EV race goes between those two, who would win it. Crook is like okay here, but obviously, you know, unless it's Scarf, it's getting outsped by Ogre, and Ting takes the hits pretty well, so it's not like overly amazing. And low kicks can also kind of come in and take a hit as well. I believe they speed tie at 92 if I'm remembering correctly. So I think we can start the game. I expect something like either a Blood Moon, or maybe if it's U-turn, a Ogre Pawn, or a Ting Lu lead. I think those are the good options on Cass's side. On Super Rex's side, I think Conk is a decent lead. I don't hate Heatran to get the Terra off. I think getting the Terra off is very beneficial considering the double ground on the other side. Well, I also think, you know, bundle is relatively safe, although again, it should be a U-turn bundle over a flip turn because of this water absorb Wellspring. So it is bundle, that's safe, and it is Ting-Lu. So yeah, these are probably the two safest options. Ting-Lu can get hazards, bundle can U-turn if it doesn't like the matchup. Obviously it's gonna like the matchup here. This should be a pretty free Ice Beam from bundle. It shouldn't really fear anything from Ting-Lu. U-turns. Why? So sometimes in draft, people like to pivot when they don't necessarily need to. So if you look at Cass's team, right? If you look at all the Pokemon that Cass has, the only resist to ice is Armarouge. I highly doubt Armarouge comes in on bundle. That feels a bit aggressive from Cass. And I really don't think there's a switch. So the probable play is that this Ting-Lu stays in on bundle, which it does. And do we think it's going to click a hazard? More than likely, that's usually why you lead Ting-Lu. So I think Ice Beam, you know, it's not necessarily guaranteed to 2 a KO just because Ting is so fat. I don't know what this bundle is necessarily. It could be specs. If it's specs, I would hope the Ice Beam 2 KOs. And even if it's not specs, I do believe that Ice Beam from bundle could possibly 2 KO. It is a very strong Pokemon. And more importantly, bundle has a really high defense stat. And I think it would live, like, I think, unless it's Choice Band Stone Edge, I think it would live any hit from Ting-Lu. So I don't know if, like, I get playing conservative early, but considering the 6 Pokemon on the opposite side of the field, I don't know if U-turn is necessary on turn 1. Especially if you're not Boots, because this could be Rocks, and then your bundle's really hurt, really crippled. So it's Ogre, Ruination. Yeah, I think Ice Beam was fine. After seeing that it's a Ruination that just comes out, which, like bundle doesn't love taking damage, but it doesn't hate it either. It's not like the worst thing in the world. It's just meant to outspeed and, you know, get some revenge kills, and honestly chip this Ting-Lu. Chipping this Ting-Lu would have been huge for it. So now I'm hoping this Ogre is going to either click like a Spike or a U-turn expecting Goodra. I think that's pretty obvious. I would not Ivy Cudgel. Yup, Goodra, Sap Sipper. Okay. So yeah, Goodra has the Sap Sipper ability, which unfortunately means that it's immune to grass moves. So this is kind of just misguidance on what the spammable move is. We U-turned with the bundle when the spammable move is Ice Beam into this team, but we Cudgel with the Ogre Pawn when that's a much, much less spammable move. There's more resist, like even if this wasn't Sap Sipper, there's more resist. There's 3 grass resist instead of 1 very flimsy ice resist that also can't take a water move. And instead we opt to get into a position to use a grass move against a team that has a potential immunity. So that's a bit of a misplay. And we do have the U-turn. So yeah, the U-turn was definitely the play there that turn instead of initially with the bundle. I do like that we have U-turn on bundle though. So this puts Cass in a pretty good position, especially if this is physical Goodra. It is Intimidate Crook, so that implies some non-Scarf, um, non-Scale Shot Moxie Sweeper set. Uh, doesn't necessarily mean defensive. I've also run Intimidate with Scarf if you really need it, so like I don't think it necessarily has to not be like offensive, because I think Crook should always have some attack to really do a ton of damage, because Crook is much better doing damage than anything else. But Intimidate is interesting to note. It helps with low kicks, although I don't think you want to come in on low kicks, and it helps with Wellspring, although I don't think you want to come in on Wellspring, but in a desperate moment, you could get them to go to -1. So yeah, pretty free knock. Choice, so it is Scarf Intimidate, okay. And it loses that. So that's interesting. Being Scarf in this matchup is okay. I kind of get it. I assume you have CC for Blood Moon, EQ, because that's spammable. CC is also okay for low kicks. It's a neutral at least when both your stabs are resisted. I do think Scarf, you know, it has a hard time clicking buttons sometimes based on because low kicks can actually pretty easily tank a hit. I think probably a Ting Lu would come in here though. Lu or Blood Moon. I mean, let's see if you CC. I think CC is probably the best play you have here, because Knock isn't going to kill, EQ isn't going to kill, and if you can get this, even if the Gudra stays in for some reason, if you get Chip on this, it opens up Ogerpon immensely. Okay, so we Knock. So we do get the Chip. So Knock is also pretty fine because like you get rid of Ting Lu's item, so it's always value. Like I said earlier, Knock is always a valuable move to have. So I don't hate that at all, and obviously it works out better because you don't get -1/-1, and it just does more damage than CC against neutral Gudra, and Gudra's really low, which opens up your Ogerpon. So the game swings slightly back in the favor of Rex with that, I believe. In terms of the play from Cass's perspective, I do think it's unnecessary to stay in here. You have a lot of decent answers. Ting Lu's a decent answer. Blood Moon's a decent answer. Low Kicks is a decent answer. Maybe you were fearing CC, but even if you're fearing CC, Low Kicks probably lives. If you have if you have like Leech Life, I mean, you can even First Impression. Obviously, Heatran could come out, but you could easily call Heatran, and you could even U-turn probably. Yeah, so he stays into EQ the Crook. I wonder if he was expecting a double to Heatran. I can't expect that was the optimal play there. Or I can't see how that was the optimal play there. But it is going to be... Okay, so Gudra gets picked off. So the main Ogre answer is gone. Blood Moon comes in. Gonna pick it off. Oh, doesn't even kill with Vacuum. That's bad. And he gets crit. Alright, so obviously this is all not great, considering could all be avoided. We knew Wellspring outsped. In fact, I don't see a reason Wellspring doesn't come in and just click Ivy Cudgel. Especially when Vacuum isn't guaranteed to kill. I think this is a bit of a, what's it called? Maybe a calc said that Vacuum would kill, but this might have more HP than what the calc was. I think potentially we just have to be more what's it called, wary in terms of positioning, because I also think potentially Ogre could have come in and gotten this with a Trailblaze and probably killed it. And with that Trailblaze been at +1 and been very, very threatening for this team. Because it could just U-turn out on something it didn't like, and if something came in that it did like, it kind of becomes a big, big problem. But they do pick off Crook, which makes sense. I think that Crook got immense value for Rex, considering its matchup honestly isn't the greatest. I like that it took down Gudra for him there. And Ogerpon makes complete sense now. It's really been opened up thanks to Gudra being dead. I mean, Ivy Cudgel's really nice here. Low Kicks, like, can take it, but doesn't love to take it. Same with Armarouge. Yeah, so it's hard Armarouge because they don't really want to take the Cudgel. They want to get a weak armor proc here to get to the +2 speed with the Cudgel. Yep, weak armor. Yep. So they get the +2. But it's going to be Heatran, expecting the armor cannon. And because this is a Terra Fairy Heatran, it is going to probably hard wall what's a Terra fighting Terra Blast plus Armor Cannon Dual Stab. And Cass is gonna be in a very interesting position where they have to predict essentially whether the Heatran Terras or not to go for the Psychic Stab they have. Because I'm assuming Cass is gonna click either Meteor Beam or Calm Mind, some sort of setup here. Psyshock. Okay, so that puts Cass in an even worse position. So now they have to predict. So the reason you click some setup move there is because obviously the Ogerpon can't afford to stay in there, in my opinion. Staying in is essentially just losing the Pokemon. So to maximize your return on this switch in to get to the +2 speed, because Armorage really only gets like 1 or 2 opportunities to do what it needs to do. You either need to Meteor Beam to get the +1 special attack or Calm Mind to get to +1 special attack, +1 Spit F. And that way, when Heatran comes in, you at least force a challenging situation where they have to either Terra, predicting your Terra Blast, or not Terra, predicting you to predict them and go for Psyshock. It kind of becomes like a mind game. Instead, the mind game is kind of mitigated because Heatran's going to live pretty much any move no matter what, so it's really safe for Rex to just Terra. Because the most obvious thing for you to do is to Terra and Terra Blast. Well, you Meteor Beam, so you get the Meteor Beam off here. If that was the previous turn, this would have been so good. It's actually not bad anymore because he went for Stealth Rocks on a Pokemon that was like immediately threatening a potential sweep. So because of that, this actually becomes a decent situation, and you pretty much guarantee yourself a kill here. It's probably going to be this Heatran, I'm guessing. Yeah. Oh, Heatran just lives. Huh. I did not expect that from Heatran. Armarouge. I mean, I do love Heatran, so I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm surprised, but I'm not totally shocked. Psyshock. 25 to 30. Let's say you're bold. Berry. It doesn't really matter as long as it's neutral. That's a bad roll. Unless you're timid for some reason when you're trying to get the boost from the speed anyways. I mean, maybe you're timid to outspeed a Scarf Bundle at +2. Yeah. If you're timid, it's still a roll, but it's a roll that's like a 50-50 kinda, because he's at what? It would be 46. Oh no, it's not even a roll. Either way, this is a very, very defensive Heatran to live that, and now your Armarouge goes down. Alright, so now you go Wellspring. This is a scary situation. I'm assuming this is Flash Fire Heatran for Armarouge specifically, but if it is Flame Body, then this is going to be dangerous, because I'm assuming you're going to click Trailblaze here. Yeah. No burn proc. Ah, yeah. That's risky. I feel like you could have done this against the Crocodile earlier instead of taking half your HP away on Ursaluna on what was potentially a roll. That's obviously unfortunate, and now you're wishing you probably clicked Armor Cannon against this instead. He did bluff the Flash Fire very well, though. I will give Rex that. And now your Ogerpon's in a pretty tough spot. Yeah, crit doesn't even do enough. Okay, so this... Either you got 2 speed ties, or this is a slow Ogerpon, and it's not Terra either. Well, the Heatran Terra, so we know that. So that was an interesting choice to go Ogerpon there. I think... Well, Conk beats the last 3. This was probably fine. ultimately, because if you look at the resources that are left, Conk beats these last three pretty decisively, and getting this weakened for a Conk Mach Punch, because now Conk, this is actually probably good. Conk gets to, this is pretty good positioning, because Conk gets to come in, click, Mach, get its Flame Orb if it's Flame Orb. It's not, but that's fine. Low Kick is forced to come out. Leech, it does a good amount, but this should do a ton. Yeah. And it should probably be over. Yeah, Conk cleans the last two. Okay, he mocks. I don't know if that was necessary, but I'm assuming it's AV. That's maybe AV damage. I would have to assume that Blood Moon does more, usually. Alright, so Ting Lu comes out. He swaps out Conk. I don't know why in particular he does that. But it shouldn't matter at this point. He's too far up. He needs... Oh, he gets the Toxic off. He wants to just confirm it. I don't think this was necessary, but I understand it. Now you go bundle to preserve diff. Yep, alright. That actually does more than I expected. This might be a decent investment. Pump. Okay, I don't fully get these plays now from Rex. I feel like, yeah, Ice Beam, just finish it. Alright. So I think really the key plays, letting Goodra go down kind of opened up Ogerpon, made it a little bit more difficult for Cass. Going for the Psyshock over the Meteor Beam immediately. I think if Cass Meteor Beamed immediately into the Heatran, they had a much better chance of winning, because the Heatran would be low, and then they could just click a move after, especially because they went for rocks first. I think going Blood Moon was probably... It's just a matter of positioning. I think Soup Boy Rex positioned the end game better than Cass did. And made a fewer mistakes with his... Like, I think Crook for Goodra is really good value when Goodra is the main answer to the Ogerpon. And Crook really doesn't necessarily beat any of these guys one-on-one, except maybe not +2 Armarouge, but even then. And I think Heatran got its value massively this match as well, which helped it pull out the win. And then obviously Conk kind of just soloed the last three, because Super Rex knew... This is something key in Pokemon called understanding, or where you need to understand your end game. So Rex recognized that Conk, at once Wellspring went down, would beat the last three rather decisively, and so he positioned himself around getting Conk in once only those three were left, and effectively made it very difficult for Cass to be able to defeat it, to be able to stand up against its fighting coverage, because Armarouge was down, because Wellspring was burned and low, because Goodra couldn't Terra Poison to stop the fighting stabs. Which, like I said off team preview, Conk looked very nasty. Alright, with that, we can move on to the next game. We have Toe Baby, who I believe is... Let me just make sure I have these games right. Rosters. So I'm looking for the Weavile Skeletors team. Pop Smoke versus Sun Team. Raging Bolts. Okay. So it's the Metronomers versus the Raging Bolts. So off rip, Gouging Fire looks really problematic. There's really no great dragon resist for Bup Smoke, and except for Fortress, and Fortress doesn't want to take the fire move. I'm surprised Fortress came into Sun. It's a Terra Flying Lando and a Terra Water Wo-Chien. So the Terra Water Wo-Chien should help a little bit, maybe. Terra Poison on the opposing side for the Raging Bolts on Walking Wake. I wonder why. I can't currently see it. Mayhaps for Wo-Chien pre-Terra, but if Wo-Chien Terras, it becomes kind of not so great. But even with just water, flamethrower, and dragon coverage, Walking Wake still in Sun looks very, very threatening this game. Almost impossible to switch in for Bub Smoke. So I would say Bub Smoke has the disadvantage off team preview, but still, Pokemon like Weavile look really, really menacing. It looks like there's really no great switch into Weavile's coverage moves. And I also think Lando could potentially be dangerous, although there is a Mandibuzz, who's usually a pretty effective counter. In terms of leads, said Landorus could be a lead. Obviously, Fortress is an okay lead to get hazards up. Obviously, the most obvious one for Richmond is the Torkoal to get the Sun, but I personally don't usually like leading the Weather Setter. Other options include potentially Great Tusk, maybe like Cress, but I don't necessarily see why you would do that. Let's get into it. Okay, so it's Urshi. So that tells me that Urshi is Scarf, and it's Mandy. So a good lead for Richmond, potentially calling the Urshi lead. So you immediately clock off lead that this is a Scarf Urshi. Usually when you see an Urshi lead, it means it's Scarf, because they're usually not fast enough to be a U-turn lead guy unless it's Scarf. Mandy being here as the lead is good for Richmond. I wonder if they clocked that it would be Urshi that's the lead. Immediately Fortress makes sense. Doesn't even want to have the chance to take U-turn chip. And the Mandy obviously U-turns expecting either a U-turn from Urshi itself or to just swoop right out, which is correct. So this is immediately good reads from Richmond. And probably the necessary play from Bub Smoke considering the lead. I think he just kind of got called immediately on the lead, and because of this, Richmond gets their Sun relatively for free, which is nice. Oh, I missed it. They did Tailwind, so they didn't even U-turn turn one. I think I would have U-turned before I don't know if the Tailwind was necessary. I do think that was a bad. I was like, why did they get rocks up? And it's because he Tailwinded instead of immediately U-turning. I think immediately U-turning so these rocks don't go up is probably a better play. Keeping hazards off the field with Sun is so important. Obviously, this thing can rapid spin in, but you can never get rid of these rocks with Dirge here, because Dirge is always going to come in on Torkoal to prevent the spin, as we will see in a second. Yeah, Willow. I wouldn't be surprised if this Torkoal couldn't even really hit Dirge. And now with Sun up, these Torch Songs are going to get really powerful really fast. This is actually immediately starting to get scary for Richmond. Okay, Clear Smog, so that's nice to stop the boosts. So, and it pops Balloon. So, we're kind of in a neutral state now, except for the fact that Dirge has healing and Torkoal doesn't. And this is kind of why I'm a big fan of sustainability and healing. It's that even in, like, the states where nothing's going on, if you have healing and they don't, eventually they die and you don't. So the game's, like, firmly in Bub Smoke's favor now, because the residual that Richmond is accumulating is permanent, while the residual that he's accumulating isn't, and he can just continue to Torch Song forever, and Bub Smoke is forced to switch to something to take it and take permanent chip unless it's Mandibuzz or Cresselia, and if it's Mandibuzz or Cresselia, I would personally just Torch Song again with the Sun Boost with the plus special attack. So I believe that's what we will see. Yawn, I would have just Torch Songed again. I don't know if this is necessary. I don't even know if you want to force a switch from Torkoal. I think you just waste Sun turns spamming Torch. Yeah, he gets up his own rocks. That's fine. I would have just torched that previous turn, and then I'd torch again, and I'd get a +1 on this. If this thing dies, the team becomes way easier to deal with because it doesn't have Sun anymore. I think Torch, Torch, Torch over and over and over again would have been optimal here to just get as much permanent chip as possible and apply as much pressure. You already have your rocks up. You don't really need to force this Torkoal out. In fact, you're in a good position because Torkoal is in on Dirge. So yeah, now he gets to go gouging on your Torch. Shadow Ball instead. I mean, so this is working fine for Bubsmoke. If this is Morning Sun, then this isn't permanent damage on the gouging, but gouging is probably the biggest threat in my opinion on Richmond's side. So getting damage on it, especially going gouging on Dirge. Dirge is like one of the only guys on the team that like kind of deals with gouging in the sense that it can take one hit. So getting the Spadef drop so that the next Shadow Ball does even more if they try to heal, and getting the gouging in already super hurt, and if you don't have healing literally at 47%. All of this is kind of adding up for Richmond here a little bit, and it's all because just the momentum, the positioning of the game. So that's why in Pokemon, positioning is so key. It's literally how you win and lose games. Like it's really all that matters ultimately is how you position your pieces, because Bubsmoke positioned Fortress, and I missed this turn one because he positioned Fortress in front of Mandibuzz on a Tailwind that ultimately meant nothing, so it was a wasted turn. He got his rocks and then executed his plan of having Dirge come in on Torkoal to prevent all removal of those rocks, and now Richmond is permanently crippled from his son because his gouging isn't boots, and it's his main offensive threat on this team, in my opinion. Because the Dragon and fire coverage is so scary, all of a sudden his offensive prowess is way, way lower because the pressure is so on. Because this Dirge can always come in on Torkoal, it has healing, and it has a way of permanently getting its special attack up in Sun, so Richmond is boosting for Bubsmoke here. So it's an Earthquake. I think taking this is unnecessary from Bubsmoke. I really don't necessarily think it's something he has to do. He could easily go Lando. Even if he goes for like an Outrage, let's say, you probably take it. There's no way he fire moves, so you could even go Fortress, so obviously he fire moves the next turn. I assume this is a Shadow Ball. Yeah, because it doesn't even kill, which is what I figured it wouldn't kill. Because, so like, you're in a pretty awkward position now where you have to switch anyways if you want to keep your Skeledirge, which in my opinion you desperately do, so that he can never ever spin these rocks away. Because if this gouging truly isn't Morning Sun, which we don't know yet, but if it truly isn't Morning Sun, it's dead as long as you keep these rocks up, like guaranteed no matter what, and you're in a way, way better position. Yeah, so he goes Lando the next turn. I think this is just what he should have done the turn before. Because that Shadow Ball, I mean, he could look at rolls maybe. I think there's no chance this Shadow Ball was ever killing. But he does go, and he gets, yeah, and he takes the Outrage this time. So he would have taken an EQ last time and been completely free. Instead, this time he has to take an Outrage. So I do think that that turn before for sure was the turn to execute this plan. But ultimately, I still think this is technically the right play. Because this, what's it called? Dirge can always heal up later on Torkoal. It still holds value. It can still Torch Song spam to get through Cresselia, to get through Mandibuzz. It does lose to Tuscan, it does lose to Wake. So it's not like the most valuable piece, but it's still valuable. This Lando itself, you know, with Mandibuzz here, with Cresselia here, Earthquake spam isn't really real. Tusk probably beats it 1v1. Walking Wake kills it, obviously. There's really not much, especially because Gouging's already dead. There's really not much value to this Lando anymore currently. The Terraflying Terra Blast is like free, but Mandibuzz and Cresselia would still tank that, eat it up, and either Foul Play or Toxic if you're Mandibuzz, or just Ice Beam if you're Cress. So he decides to Terra here. Interesting. Because that makes him weak to rocks now. So he's deciding he's essentially not going to switch out. I mean, he still has one more come in if he wants to. But he takes out Gouging, which is good. And Torkoal comes out to instantly set Sud again, which I think makes sense, because if he forces... He can either... He can spin and get rid of the rocks, which would be really, really nice. Or maybe Great Tusk has rocks. I mean, I'm assuming this thing was ballooned to block Great Tusk spin as well. You know what I mean? That's why I had the balloon, so that the ground move wouldn't hit it, the fighting move wouldn't hit it, and spin wouldn't hit it. So we're gonna see here, I assume a spin. Yep, you tank it. Wisp, miss, tough. So here's my problem. You just lost your Torkoal, so I feel like this is a misallocation of resources. So Mandibuzz and Cresselia take hits from this thing, because I'm assuming this is Scarflando now, if I had to guess. They take hits from this really, really well. I don't get why you would go Torkoal to just Will-O-Wisp. I think the only reason you would ever go Torkoal here is to greed a Rapid Spin, hoping they stay in and not go Dirge, even though it's like the only opportunity for Dirge to get a Morning Sun or a Slack off. Because they see that this Lando not even necessarily dies, but will take rocks because they tear it, and they don't want to switch out because of that. I think that's the only upside to going Torkoal. If that's not the plan, I don't see why you don't go Cress and just pick it off with whatever your attacking move is, or go to Mandibuzz and pick it off with whatever your attacking move is. Both Pokemon would take the hit very, very well. So instead, Torkoal dies, and Walking Wake comes in, which makes sense now. I think that's probably the correct play at that time. But it still takes... Okay, so this Lando is getting a ton of value. I guess if it was you knew this Lando was Scarf and you weren't Scarf, it's actually the wrong play. So we've taken essentially, what is it, 20%, 80%, 70%, 170% of damage from this Lando. And the necessary damage was honestly 0, because you could have kept gouging as a sack and gone Crested, healed up, and been fine. So instead, we take 170% instead of the necessary percent being 0. But even if it's sack and gouging, which I think is fine on that turn to go Crest, we've instead of taking 20%, we've taken 170% across all our Pokemon. Because for some reason we're refusing to go to the Pokemon that would take the hit. So that's just like, in terms of play, a misallocation or a misallocation of Pokemon, of who you should go on which guys, on who should counter who. So now the very obvious Urshifu comes out. So this is, it's double Scarf here, I have to guess. Scarf Lando, Scarf Urshifu. It's gonna be oh, it's not even Scarf, it's just Sucker. So Mandy comes out now, or maybe it's Scarf with Sucker. Fori blocks the Toxic, so that's good. Probably a spin. Yeah. Oh, Gyro. So, yeah, the Tailwind boosts the Gyro now, so that's pretty bad for Richmond. And it's just looking pretty over at this point, I'd say. Great Tusk comes in, but it's going to take a lot because of the Tailwind boost. You know, Great Tusk is pretty fast. Yeah, and Fortress is for sure going to live this. So I think the refusal to go Cresselia is really the great downfall of this game, in my mind, personally. Yeah, Knock doesn't even kill. The ground move would have killed. And Gyro would have killed, so that explosion... Or Gyro would have been a roll, probably. So the explosion wasn't necessary, because Gyro did about the same. But Urshi just gets to come in. It's going to be a Wicked Blow. I mean, this Urshi is pretty blatantly Scarf, in my opinion. Unless we see something where it isn't. Well, this Wicked Blow is just going to kill. Yeah, it is Scarf. I have to assume it's Scarf. Because it led. I think if it leads, you have to assume it's Scarf. And yeah, it's just going to kill all three. So pretty good use of the Dirge to block the rock. The rocks really hurt, because he had no boots either. The rocks really, really hurt Richmond, and he didn't prioritize getting rid of them fast enough, in my opinion. Especially letting Gouging come out with it before getting rid of them, when I think Gouging was your #1 way of dealing damage this game. And then I think it was a bit of a misplay around the Lando, taking way too much damage on way too many key guys. And also a misuse of Cresselia to tank hits when that's usually its main use. Alright. So we are moving on to Sorry about that. So we are moving on to Smeargly, which I believe is the Clombrook Kyogres. Yep. Rain. Versus Hollis, which I know is the Caborca Gengars. So this is a snow versus rain battle. So it's Terra. Clombrook's only Terra is Typhlosion, huh? That's a little bit sad. And Caborca is Hands, Cetitan, Unbound. So it's Water Hands, Water Hoopa, Ghost, Cetitan. So Cetitan probably for sweeping purposes. Hands and Hoopa just to take a hit from Barraskewda, because Barraskewda does look very, very threatening. I would say if Barraskewda was Terra Water, I would give the edge to Smeargly off preview, because there's really nothing that wants to take it. Although if Hands is defensive and Terra Water, it probably could take the liquidation decently well. Because Hands has really good HP and pretty good defense as well. But I would assume, unless we're in a defensive situation where we need to, we're looking to Terra Cetitan to get some neutral Terra Blasts on a whole bunch of guys. Like Prim, for example. Orthworm is here for a ground that didn't come, I assume. Pult is here. So the obvious leads here are Overquill, and Pelipper. Those are the obvious ones for Smeargly. Overquill to set hazards. In fact, but I think Overquill's probably a WinCon set. Gunk plus Crunch looks pretty good into everything except, again, Hands. But with Swift Swim, I think you can kind of beat down Hands and then go for the game late, potentially. Good leads for Hollis are the Worm to set up hazards, Dragapult, obviously, to, just get out, or potentially one of these two to just get the Terra off instantly if they do want to commit to that defensive Terra. I think it's unlikely they lead Cetitan, obviously, and pretty unlikely they lead Slowking as well. If it's Pelipper lead, I wouldn't be surprised at a Hands lead counter. But Pult is also pretty good into Pelipper because it has, T-Bolt. Although I don't know if they'd be keen to click it because of that Thunderous. I think they might potentially click Draco turn 1, even though there's 2 fairies. So the game starts. It is a Slowking lead, so I'm just wrong. I suppose I understand it because if Pelipper is the lead, you can instantly get rid of the Rain. I am just not a fan of lead Pelipper usually when I'm playing with Rain. I played with Rain last season, and I think I led Pelipper once, maybe ever, because it's so obvious, and people usually like to play around that. So it's going to be, yeah, so the Rain's instantly going to go away. This is going to be a Chili for sure. It's a trick, so the Rain stays. So Prim being the answer to Slowking is interesting. Prim getting the Lagging Tail is pretty bad for the Iron Hands matchup. Everything else, it doesn't really matter. This is interesting in the sense that... Oh, it's actually really bad for Caborca, because you can no longer click Chili, because he just tricked an Assault Vest on himself. That's actually, like, disastrous, because now Cetitan can't get the snow. That's a disastrous play for Caborca. So we've kind of stumbled into a really, really bad situation for Caborca, pretty much of his own accord, which is very unfortunate. Yeah, that's suboptimal to say the least. Yeah, that's really bad. Just Shadow Balls. Crit. I mean, it does nothing because it's Assault Vest. Another Shadow Ball. I think Moonblast would have probably done about as much, but whatever. Going hard Hoopa is pretty nasty because I think, I mean, maybe it's physical with Thunder Punch. That would actually make sense. Yeah, that would make a ton of sense. That would kill here. But, like, if it's special, I would bet on Prim to live anything one time and hit it with Moonblast. It is a switch to Overquill, predicting something, which makes sense. Energy Ball, I would bet Prim lives that, and Moonblast does a lot, but it probably doesn't kill. Barb. So on Swift Swim, I'll say this because I mean I'm just giving advice. On Swift Swim, usually like Sweeper Overquill instead of the defensive set, which I think that's what this is the Swiftflume set, because I didn't see Intimidate. I personally prefer Gunk or even Poison Jab, because Barb is very weak and needs the poison to actually do real damage. But obviously, the Dark move, because I think Orthworm's pretty obvious considering its defense is so high and it's immune to poison. The Dark move is as neutral on Hoopa Unbound as the poison move. And the only reason not to click Dark move is if you think Hands is coming in. And I really do feel... I mean, it doesn't really matter. The Crunch would have done nothing to Earthworm anyways, but it would be permanent damage unless this is Rest Earthworm. So I think, like, Crunch would have been fine. So Thundurus comes out. I think this makes sense. There's really not much Earthworm can do to Thundurus pending having Rock Slide, which it might have. It probably has it now. You see Coil, that usually means you're trying to hit as much Pokemon as possible with a good damage. You don't want to get walled by a Thundurus with your Steel and Earthquake, with your Iron Head plus Earthquake combo. So I have to assume... I'm assuming it's Rest. So I don't know. Or maybe it doesn't have Iron Head. Maybe it's Earthquake Stone Edge. That could make sense. Because Iron Head doesn't really necessary. Thunder. Yeah, just Okos. I don't know if that was necessary, that crit. I mean, I can look it up. So, I think this is a case of going for something a little too early, or going for something that just had a very low chance of working. This Coil Earthworm, I can't see a way it wins the game, especially with Pokemon like Thundurus running around, who are so incredibly strong specially. It was like, that was a Thunder. I mean, it's Max Spadef, maybe. Because usually you're Max Spadef when you're like when you're like a Curse / Coil set. It's probably not actually, because that crit killed. If that crit didn't kill, then it wouldn't do that much. And this is like not pending any items at all. It could be like choice specs. I actually wouldn't be surprised at all if it's choice specs. If it's choice specs, that has a pretty good chance of killing. I don't know if it's choice specs. Polk comes out. Alright, it's not choice specs. Confirmed. Prim. Getting the screens up, I think, is a good play. Yeah, that does nothing damage-wise. I think this Prim might be... Oh, no, it's not. It's Lagging Tail. That's right, because of the trick earlier. So, I think getting up screen, like the screen, is a pretty decent play. But I'm really worried about Hollis' chances of winning, because I think it's now kind of on Hands to win this game. And I don't know if he can get through all 6. The Titan's essentially neutered because it can't get the snow. Slowking can't do its job. Hoopa maybe could do it, but I'm worried isn't going to have the moves to hit Overquill. So Titan. So is he going to try and belly jump and force it here? Yeah, so he's going to force it. If he can get Pelipper out of this Titan, that's pretty good. Yeah, W. Huge W. Letting Pelipper go down like that is really bad for Smeargly, in my opinion. Huge W to get any value out of this Titan when the snow isn't around. Knocking out the Weather Setter first. When you're doing Weather, losing your Weather Setter first is often a spell for disaster. Because it usually means some of your later Pokemon are going to be much, much less effective relatively soon. Unless you think the game's going to end in literally 7 turns. Letting your Weather Setter go down, I would have sacked literally anything other than Pelipper. I think, like, Prim was an okay sack. Like, I get Prim has value against Hands and Pulp. And a little bit, like, Slowking. I think, I don't know. I would have sacked anything but Pelipper. I think everything's lets valuable. But this lets you get in Overquill now. See, that doesn't even kill... Barrascuda was the play here, 1000%, because Barrascuda 1000% for sure kills. Instead, you instantly lose your Overquill. This is just a example of mismanagement of resources in terms of like what mon to go to at the optimal time. Oh, and he has Snowscape. Yeah, this was a really massive mistake from Smeargly, in my opinion. Now, because now I think this Titan is probably gonna claim 4, maybe. I mean, having Snowscape is huge. That's a really good bring from Hollis. Yeah, he gets everyone. And all this because he didn't go Skuta instead of... Skuta's liquidation would have claimed a kill because Slowking was low and it was in rain and it's choice banned, I have to assume. So, like, think about this. Instead of Smeargly claiming a kill and Titan being at 12%, Titan reverse grabs 4 and it's essentially an insta loss. So, like, yeah, it sets up the light screen to confirm the game. Goes hands, gets the Terra off. He's going to tank the hit really well. And it's a loss. Yeah, I really think that one turn, and that it's just a misunderstanding of the damage output of Overquill, like an overestimation of how much damage Overquill can do, compared to Barraskewda, who does way more because it's boosted in rain, and is just also naturally stronger. That one turn, I think, literally cost Smeargly the game when he was in pretty good position to win, in my opinion, if he just went Barraskewda there. Hands would have had to do a lot of heavy lifting, like a lot, especially because it would have to Terra Water in front of Barraskewda to live its hit better, and then Thunderous Thunder would have been very, very free and very dangerous. So I think like a few key things went really wrong. Mainly second Pelipper first, because that allowed the Snowscape to happen. Like, losing your Rain Setter as your first Pokemon is really, really bad. And then going Overquill over Barraskewda. Alright, so now we can move on to Owlbearmancer, who is... What Pokemon does he have? He has the Bolt. The Wailords versus Big Will, who is the Crooks. Yep. Alright, so looking at preview, we have to identify... So we look at Terras first. Oh, wrong game. So obviously we look at Terras first. We see Gren is fighting. So that means it's going to be able to deal with Psych easier. It's going to be deal with Mammo easier. We see Ground Apple. So Ground Apple is going to help deal with Raging Bolt, but it is going to be worse for Palafin, for sure. We see, on the opposing side, a Fire Jeezing. So Fire Jeezing is going to be able to deal with... I don't know. Treads, I suppose. And we see a Grass Mamoswine, which is going to help with Quag. Okay, so I see those lines. In terms of leads, Treads is a very classic good lead. Gren can lead in U-turn. Dio is obviously a good lead. If I were to lead for Big Will, personally, I would probably... Because you can expect either... I think Palafin is obviously a lead. Mamoswine has a pretty common lead set. Both of those Treads doesn't love, because it doesn't kill them, and the opposition does major damage back, so I probably back off of using Treads as the lead. I think getting Hydrapple as your lead is, like, fine. Personally, I would probably lead, because I think Gren's a win con here, I would probably lead Dio, because I think Dio has a fine matchup into all these guys. And Psycho Boost is also really, really free with Dio here. Like, there's not a Pokemon that really wants to take it at all. If I was Owlbearmancer, I would probably lead Finn and just switch out, depending on what he leads. We also see a freaking Floragato here, so there's that. I've never seen a Floragato in a game, so I suppose we'll just see how it does. So it's Quag leads for hazards. That makes sense. Like, obviously, always a hazard setter can always lead, and it is Finn lead, which also, again, makes sense. That's what I would have done. Florigato. That's, I'm assuming this is what this Florigato's here for, right? Is to be able to hit Quag, quad 4. So Seed Bomb does a shit ton, but he gets poisoned in the process. It's going to be Apple. Another Seed Bomb. Is Flora going to go get knock? I would have knocked there. I don't think Seed Bomb for a second time is necessary. Especially, I mean, maybe it's Banded or something. Mamo. Gyro. I wonder why this has Gyro. I suppose for Wheezing, right? Yeah, it has to be for Wheezing. Quag. Shard. Dio. This is going to be a Psycho Boost. Oh, Focus Blast. So maybe he saw Psycho Boost didn't kill. I would be surprised if you're offensive if Psycho Boost doesn't kill. Focus Blast is always risky, but I understand why he went for it. It is offensive. So this comes in. So I think this is a bit of a misplay from Well. If Florigato comes in, you have to assume it isn't here to just tank a Psycho Boost or whatever and die. You probably got to assume it has, like, Sucker Punch or something. I think going Hydrapple always on this little guy is, like, especially when you're non-Terran, is always free. And there's no reason to stay in and risk it going for, like, what happens here, which is essentially a double down. In fact, Florigato lives, which is pretty devastating. So he keeps the Florigato as a sack. I do think that's actually the right play. There's no reason not to keep it as a sack when you have something like Jeezing to go into, because you can always use it to gain momentum later. People underestimate the value of keeping these 7... Like, people always let these guys go down. Even if this thing's going to die to hazards, it gets you momentum back. It gets you positioning back, because later on you can sack it to the hazard and then get in a Pokemon in an advantageous spot for free. So I do like that play from the Whale Lords. Unfortunately, this is a, what's it called? Psychic Noise, which makes perfect sense in my opinion. And that really, I think late game Toxic Spikes is probably a little bit unneeded. I mean, it's good for Hydrapple, but it can just get spun relatively easily. You don't have a Ghost to block the spin from Treads. And unfortunately, not getting Chip on this is pretty bad. And now your Jeezing's dead, and your Jeezing was probably your main Treads answer. So Hydrapple, you need to Ice Punch here. Hydrapple is such a free switch in here, and it's really the only option he has if he wants to win this game and not lose a Pokemon. You need to Ice Punch. Iron Head makes no sense in my opinion. I think I've watched this game live, if I remember correctly. So, I get why you Iron Head, because Florges is the Pokemon that's out. You have to, in these games, when making these, I'm not saying predict every turn, you have to understand from their perspective how they can win the game. The only way Big Will can win this, because Florges probably gets 2-hit KO'd by Ice Punch, or at least close to it, if you're banded. And if you're not, what's it called? Or you could have flipped as well, if you really, but you need to understand that he very likely needs to switch if he wants to have a good chance at winning this game, and right there, in my opinion. Ironhead going for a flinch. This was a misplay, in my opinion, because, yeah, these things have Giga Drain, so he gets all the health back, and your Palafin's dead. Palafin beat these last 3 pretty easily. With decent health, Palafin pretty easily beats these last 3. So it's really unfortunate that we stay in here. I think this is a misunderstanding of kind of game state and what Pokemon you need in the end game to win. Like that game earlier where the Conch was preserved because it won the end game. I think Palafin won this end game if it was preserved, but instead it dies to hazards now. I think this was the place where you sack the Florigato to get the Mon in that you need to get in. Now you sack Florigato once the fin is at 7%. I think it's a turn too late, my friend. Yeah, I think this is just a misallocate, like a bit of a misunderstanding of how turns need to go. Rapid Spin. So you needed to spin there to keep your Finn alive, because Finn had a chance. Not really, but like in an end game, if Greninja is Terra'd and Florges is somehow chipped, Finn has a chance with Jet Punch, kinda. But now it's dead for sure. Now you spin. I think what's it called? Incorrect order, perhaps. Shift gear. I think if you're a setup set, you probably needed to come out earlier rather than this end game. And also, I don't think shift gearing here when you're probably going to die is an optimal play. Perhaps predicting a switch? But he has no reason to switch. He thinks you can't kill him. Ice Punch? Okay, I have to assume he doesn't have Ice Punch, which is really unfortunate. Giga. Or Draco, that works too. And then Treads is just unfortunately a really decent counter to Draft, and there's just really nothing you can do. Yeah, so you die, but unfortunately he is too... Yeah, like Florges Treads is never going to lose to non-Terra Raging Bolt. There's no way. So unfortunately, I think it's really just... not... You knew to preserve the Floragato Sec, but you didn't use it correctly. And I think you messed up with Palafin, and not having Ice Punch was unfortunate. I think that was mainly the main thing that ended up losing you this game. Was a misallocation of the end game mon you needed. Instead of it being Raging Bolt into Florges Iron Treads, you should have been more careful with your Palafin instead. Alright, moving on. We are going to get... I believe this is the... Hawaiian High Cost, Nixth versus Geobold, who is... This is the Sneasler team. DoorDash. Okay. So on preview, Sneasler has a really unfortunate time against Claude, especially if it's unaware. You can even look really SD to a win. So that's going to be unfortunate, probably. It's Terra Fairy Goldengo. I think without Terra-ing, it might be more valuable for a good amount of this game. You really only need to Terra if you want to tank like one hit from Hark or Ursa and hit back. Everything else, you're kind of better in base. So maybe you want to steal your Latios instead for their Gardevoir and potentially the normal move from Ursaluna. I think that makes more sense for the high costs here. Meanwhile, on the other side, I don't know for sure what the Terra is because it's all stab. Maybe Hark? Yeah, Hark, for sure. So your Fire, and that does look quite good. Nothing wants to take the Terra Fire Flare Blitz, especially if it's choice banned. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a Scarf Sneasler or something, and that's the lead. I wouldn't be surprised if it's lead Hark and he just clicks Flare Blitz instantly, Terra Edition, because it instantly puts on massive, massive pressure. I know, so we've seen a lot of hazard leads, and those are really, really good. Don't also underestimate the unexpected pressure lead, where you just lead one guy that can click one button into all six and do massive, massive damage, and immediately put on massive pressure and make the opponent uncomfortable. That's also a really good way to lead in Paldea decks. On Nightmarish's side, Heartflame is always a very good lead, although into Hark, I don't know if you want to lead that, because that could potentially be bad. Same with Sneasler. I think both of those make it unlikely as the lead. I think Urshi is a pretty decent lead, especially if it's Scarf. But again, if you see Sneasler, you have to switch to Claude, assuming it's Scarf too, or Gold. So it is Urshi, which basically says, hey, I'm Scarf. It's Ursaluna lead. Potentially predicting Claude. I don't like that, considering I think the most likely leads from Hawaiian High Costs were Heartflame and Urshi, if it's Scarf. And both are pretty good into this thing. Although I don't actually know if this Rapid Strike would kill, and whatever move the Ursula would go for would get significant chip. U-turn? Yeah, U-turn. It's Scarf. I figured it would U-turn. You know, Scarfers turn 1 always like to click U-turn. That's why going Rilla is risky. So this immediately puts the high cost in the driver's position. Life Orb is interesting, so it's not Scarf. He just let it. Okay. But Heartflame's obviously the right play here. I wonder if you Cudgel or if you go for SD. I think SD is pretty free. Hard Sneasler. Gets the defense boost. Okay, so now you have to switch. He did SD, which is fine. Because this is the Unburdened, so that tells me it's SD, but Claude should always be fine for this. Yeah, so you go Claude. I think this is all correct. And I think this is actually correct from the opponent as well to Dire, because with Dire, you at least have a chance to sleep or para or whatever. And that's basically the amount of value Sneasler can get on Claude. Realistically. It's Ursa. EQ is probably bad. I probably would have set a hazard or doubled, expecting them to double, because Sneasler really truly can't do anything to Claude. I think I know I haven't talked about prep much. A misprep this game is probably Grassy Seed Sneasler, considering there's very little chance this thing ever succeeds in sweeping with a Clodsire here. I really think you need to be like Band or Scarf or something and just U-turn forever. Latios gets the high horsepower, right? If that was the normal move, that would have been devastating. But this is going to be a steal now, which is what we expected, right? No steal. Crunch just tanks it. Alright, this Ursa's for sure AV. So Urshi comes out. It's going to be Stoist this time on a Surging. So I think this was fine, because now you can U-turn, and like all this chip is permanent on Blastoise. I still think Hawaiian High Cost is in the more dominant position in this game. I would try to get your Chi-Yu in, because I know I didn't mention it, but Chi-Yu actually also just obliterates this team. Dark Pulse like 2-hit KOs every single Pokemon. I think that was bad, because you're going to potentially die here, in my opinion. Yeah. I don't think that was necessary at all. I think you could have U-turned. This thing still had a lot of value it could bring, in my opinion, especially against Ursaluna and Harkonine. So now it's going to be Lottie to recover, which makes sense, but it's going to have Ice Beam. But you can just recover it off. Oh, he doesn't even bother. So when it does under 50%, guys, you can just recover spam to get your HP back. I know he's going to risk like an Ice Beam freeze, but you can't really play scared of that too much, in my opinion. You really gotta, play your optimal outs, and that would be getting as much HP back as possible before you kill the Blastoise. So Luna comes in because it's AV and he knows he lives Draco, and he kills off the Latios before it Terras. So that means he's saving Terra for gold, which I don't necessarily agree with. Yeah, so he went Hard Sneasler again on this guy. And he just cudgels this time, knowing he could potentially go Sneasler, which I think is the right play. Claude. Alright, so now this should be like a Spike. Toxic predicting the switch. I think that makes sense. I think this guy staying in is just him kind of giving up on Sneasler, recognizing Claude walls it. Recover? Yep. Just recover until you're in a comfortable HP range. Nice. So he got the EQ right, because that would have been a very bad position to be in if this Ursaluna got in. I think this was the right play, expecting the recover spam from the opponent, and from DoorDash, and I think it was actually a really nice play to EQ, expecting that. assuming that's what happened. I think that was all very good. Rilla comes out, and it's going to be Heartflame. Heartflame is always pretty good for Rilla, especially if it's not Acro, which this one appears to have an item, so it's not Acro. Drum Beating to get the minus speed. That's nice, at least. Power Whip expecting Hark, I assume. Instead, Sneasler gets to come back out. It's going to be Gold expecting the CC because Claude came out every single time so far. I mean, Sneasler just has a really hard time this match. Gold plus Claude is a tough time for Sneasler, and he's losing all the momentum. So now Heart comes out. Terra Fire Flare Blitz. Yep. If this is Scarf, this might be game over. It's not, though, so Chip. And then you should go for Dark Pulse. I don't know if this for sure kills. It is Scarf. Okay. It's just... Or maybe it was Jolly and this U is Modest. That could also be an explanation. So Moonblast, but that is too much. If this is Scarf, it's over. No. Okay, so I don't know if Grassy Glide killed, but no Grassy Glide means you wins. So, you know, it's very interesting, this end game. I think going Claude on the EQ, because EQ was doing like 36 before, so Claude actually couldn't take CC from Sneasler. So going Golden Go on the CC makes sense. Taking the Night Slash, though, is very unfortunate. I think... I don't know if the guard was Scarf. And the gold was Scarf, too. I don't know. That was an interesting game. I think Yu was played well. I think Latios and Urshi were unnecessarily sacked. But I did like the momentum he gained around the Sneasler with Gold and Claude. I think that's what ultimately won him the game. Although I wish he got a hazard up with Claude, utilizing that momentum. Because that would have made the game much, much easier for him. Okay. I think we can move on to our final game. The Ting Goes Boom versus Kiyoshima. Who is... So Ting Goes Boom. So the Tyranitar team. Gauge. Okay. So on to preview, we have a Terra Fairy Tyranitar. Well, the Tyranitar Terra, but then a Drill isn't. Why isn't the Drill Terra? Some of these teams need a restructuring in terms of where their Terras are, in my opinion, to make them more effective. So it's Tyranitar Terra, and it is a Enam Tease Terra and a Keldeo Terra. So immediately I'm wondering why it's Ghost Keldeo with Darkrai here, because that can always... Or I guess suppose you have Vacuum Wave, right? It's probably Ghost... Okay, actually makes sense. So you're Ghost for Glowking, and you have the Vacuum Wave for Rhylader. If you're... I believe it's probably like CM, Vacuum, Terra Blast. Last move, probably just Secret Sword, like strong fighting. I don't see a reason to carry water. Although if he doesn't carry water, it would mean, I guess Tyranitar, if he Terras, Terra Blast would be okay damage. Yeah, Tyranitar Terra is okay for Keldeo, but you lose the Spadef bonus, so the moves are going to hit pretty hard. Excadrill looks pretty good this match, especially if the Enam Terra steals. EQ becomes pretty free. Although you have to have Rock Slide for the Rotom, which I assume he does. If you can get an SD off, and your Rock Slide EQ, you can pull off some serious damage here. Glowking's a pretty decent EMT answer, although again, if it steals, it becomes kind of worrisome. Garchomp actually looks very threatening. This Tyranitar needs to Terra Fairy to get that Chomp damage up. So I know I said I usually don't lead Weather Setters, but I think Tyranitar lead is really good here. I wouldn't lead Darkrai in this one instance, because if it is Scarf Meow, which is like a very common lead, then it just outspeeds and U-turns you, and that's no good. I do think Meow is a good lead. I do think like Spike's Chomp is a good lead, because that pressures Excadrill to come out, which forces it to spin and waste a turn and take damage, in my opinion. Yeah, that's what I expect. Like Tyranitar, it could be Rye, but I really don't expect it. It could be Volcanion, because if you expect Meow, you can just leave Volcanion and just nuke shit. Like you just click Steam Eruption, force them to go Keldeo and take Chip. I think that could be good as well. Really strong to just put immediate pressure on. The only downside of that is if they do lead Chomp, you kind of have to tank an EQ. You can probably tank one, but you have to question if you want to tank it, because Chomp outspeeds for sure. So you're tanking EQ, then you're steaming for like 60, and then you're dead to the next EQ. And EQ is actually really free into this team. Chomp actually looks so menacing into this team. Especially pre-Terra Tyranitar. I would probably lead Tyranitar, and if it's Chomp, I'll just lead you Terra. So it is Tyranitar, and it's Keldeo. Okay. So you for sure Fairy. This Tyranitar is probably the answer to Keldeo at this point anyways. So I would for sure Fairy, and I would just go for the Thunder Wave, probably. So it's Chomp, Fairy, Terra Blast. Okay, huge. So if I said Thunder Wave because Chomp coming in I didn't expect, considering it was so likely for this Tyranitar to Terra Fairy. But Chomp does come in, and the Terra Blast is huge, and this Chomp is so threatening, and bringing Chomp in on a very obviously Terra Fairy Tyranitar when none of the other Pokemon are Terra, I think is a bit of a misplay. Especially considering how threatening and how Chomp is and how much damage it does, and how it can easily be the win con this game. Yeah, like neither of the other Terra captains come. Obviously, Chomp was going to Terra. So I think this was really good from Gage, instantly recognizing he needs to get the Fairy off right away. Tyranitar was his best lead, and I think Tingo's Boom probably misplays it right away and instantly loses half the health of one of his main threats, and it has it in on the one Pokemon that he really doesn't want to have it in on. Yeah, so EQ does nothing, and he just loses his thing. Oh, so Chomp instantly turn 2. Pretty disastrous start for the Tingo's Boom. Crown. Okay, and then he sacks T-Tar. I think this is probably bad, right? Glowking's pretty free. You can go Drill, and that's really free because it's very obviously he's going to go for a Steel move or a setup move. Either way, you outspeed the next turn because of Sand. Or if he Agilities, you just live whatever move he goes for. If you think he really has Focus Blast, you can also just go Glowking the next turn. I think there's no reason to stay in and just sack Tyranitar at all. So it's Volk. This is going to be a Steam. Flame. I would have personally gone for Steam, but he gets a crit, so that ends up being about Steam damage anyways, I'd have to guess. G-King. Stays in. I guess there's really nothing Keldeo can super do to Volcanion, right? Now he Steams. 33. He actually does less than I expected. G-King. I think G-King, even though this was okay, staying into Steam, I think G-King was still better because you don't take this unnecessary chip. G-King can always heal, Volcanion can't. This is kind of another thing I've been hammering home about these games. You want to get your Pokemon with recovery in as much as possible to tank the hits, especially against Pokemon they're supposedly supposed to wall. Because if they're not walling, if they're not doing that job, what are they here for? If they're not here to tank the hit and heal it off, what is Glowking here for? Let it do its job. Make it so ease off Volcanion a bit. HP is valuable, you know. He could have used, because he gets one of these a game, probably one of these tanks. He tanks a hit from anyone once a game. Get it on Meow. Get it on Rotom maybe. Maybe you live a Rotom Volt from 90 whatever, and you get another Steam off. And and Gloking would still be at full, even if it takes a Secret Sword, and it can do effective damage against Keldeo. You would also force the Terra Ghost, probably, which I think is good, because then the Enam isn't stealing. But now you go Gloking, so that's fine. Yeah, so he doesn't want his Terra Steel because it's so low, or Terra Ghost it, so this was just always free. And to go Gloking. And now you get a future setup, which forces Meowin or someone to take the hit. Screens, I think Screens is a valuable have for the Tingo's Boom. I like that a lot. Going Drill is very interesting. Hard Drill on Rotom, who for sure lives Rock Slide and gets an Overheat or a Will-O-Wisp. I don't fully get it. So yeah, Rock Slide comes out, lives easily. Reflect. So I think that he's setting up for a sweep here, which I think might be right because he has no other way of winning. Reflect might be right instead of Willow or Overheat. Overheat doesn't kill, so like, what's the point? At least I think it doesn't kill. It probably does kill, actually. He's setting up. He's recognizing at this point there's no way for him to win other than a sweep. So getting both screens up and just going for it. But he has to go for it after this. Go Enam. Have weakness policy. Meow. That's not a setup Pokemon. Yeah, so he gets the kill on Excadrill. Here's my question. What was the point of the screens? You could have just killed it with Rotom, probably, or Willowed it with Rotom. And Rotom would still be alive. Instead, you lose it for screens, but the screens you're not utilizing to set up with anything. So now Bax comes out. DD. I suppose because of the screen, you force him to switch, so that's nice at least, because you do live. Tachyon doesn't do enough, though. And now Enam comes out and you get Thunder Waved and your win condition at this point is dead. Ugh. Unlucky Para. Unlucky Para. That's probably game. Dead. Probably live. Yeah. I don't know if you're dead. No, but close. Okay, so it is Scarf Meow. Vacuum. Oh, it's also Scarf. Why didn't he Secret Sword? I guess expecting Gloking. Gloking probably is the right play there. There's no reason not to go Gloking, because this thing still outspeeds the last Mon. Like, Gloking's outlived its usefulness at this point. You go Bax now. You know it's Scarf, so this is free. You can EQ, expecting him to switch. Shard is 100% unnecessary. So you know he's Scarf, so he's locked into Surf. You 1000% live. You 100% EQ, expecting him to go Crown to save it, because it does kill Darkrai at the end. Oh, I think you just lost this game, my friend. Because you didn't EQ. Or DD. Yeah, that's tough. That's also a Scarf Crown. That's an interesting end game, because I really think Gage had that. I think he misplayed at the end there a few times. I think staying in... Let me check something. This Gloking did not have I was gonna say, why was this Gloking so low? This Gloking did not have Regenerator. Huh. Huh. And no one pointed it out. Interesting. Alright. Well, I think we'll leave it on that for this week. Sometimes there's just prep mistakes in the builder, you know. Sometimes things go unnoticed. It's unfortunate. I do think, you know, in terms of play, you do have to recognize that he can't stay in there in either DD or EQ. Although EQ actually wouldn't have saved you there, because Crown for sure lives, and because it's Scarf, it does just pick off the last two. So you did really need to have that regenerator ability on you, unfortunately. Or have your Volcanion not take that aforementioned hit earlier from Keldeo and just gone Glow King. Because then you would have had a lot of HP and potentially been able to live one of the Scarf hits from the Crown. Although this was... Either your Darkrai was incredibly slow, or this was triple Scarf from the Tinko's Boom with Crown, Meow, and Keldeo, which is very interesting. Good comeback by the Tinko's Boom, though. And it's very, very cool to have triple Scarf, because I do like double Scarf a lot. So triple Scarf I'm not entirely against. Speed control is easily the most important thing in Pokemon. Being able to outspeed, because if you don't outspeed and you just die, then you're not a Pokemon at all. You're just dead. So speed is easily the most important stat in Pokemon. You need speed control. You always... Having a Pokemon faster than any Pokemon on the opponent's side makes the game 90% easier, because you have something that can revenge low Pokemon, which really puts the control in your favor. And I think with that last bit of advice there, that's going to be the video. Thank you for watching this recap of Week 3 Neon. I'll probably do more of these in the future. This was fun. It was long. I had a good time. Thank you. Peace out.